over the last years, a big focus also from the Parliament, where we will hear from Vlad Gregor in a second. We are extremely pleased, Thomas, that ASEA would like to co-organize this event with us. It's a very important topic and very timely topic that we have to discuss here. It's clear that as Esport, we see, secure truck parkings as one of these nodal points where you for sure can implement some kind of alternative fuel infrastructure, be it charging points or fueling points or whatever you need. So that fits very well with the transition, you could say, that the commercial vehicles are undergoing at the moment. And I think Vlad in the Parliament has also been one of the persons working very hard in order to put safe and secure truck parkings on the agenda, but also at the same time have a keen eye towards how can we basically make the world a bit more sustainable, and how can we look at diminishing the CO2 emissions that we are having. So we have a long agenda, and I'm very interested to see that there's absolutely no breaks anticipated. So I think we'll just go on until we're done, unless we will take 5 minutes in the end. So I will look a little bit about how things are going on, but at least I think we can try to go on for a while. So again, Christy, I'm sure you can also control the microphone. So if there's any sounds going on, just cut all of them, and then we can just turn on the one that speaks again. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Vlad Gjorke. And Vlad, I hope that I'm pronouncing your surname more or less correctly. So Vlad is a member of the Renew Europe group in the European Parliament. As I said, he's been involved and are very interested, I think, as well, in transport. He's a rapporteur on AFIR in the TREN group. He is the shadow rapporteur, or will be the shadow rapporteur, on the EU Urban Mobility Framework, another very important point. Vlad has always looked at decarbonization in transport, how that is done in the best possible way. I think, Vlad, also you are one of the persons being instrumental in saying we need places where the trucks can park and where they can hold, both in relation to the security and safety of the drivers, but also of the goods that they are transporting, of course. So you have been quite instrumental in that, and we would like to thank you. But for sure, you're also looking ahead on digitalization and what can we do in order to see to get some, let's say, alternatives to the current diesel that most are running on. So Vlad, I will give the floor to you to give us a little bit of a feeling of what you're doing in the European Parliament, and especially, of course, what you're working for in the Parliament, somebody that we have worked very closely with in order to put these things on the agenda and to make it realistic as well, what we're doing in the future. So Vlad, over to you.
Well, thank you very much for the wonderful presentation, and also many thank you Esport as a whole for organizing this wonderful event. We need more events. Maybe we could get to see each other more in person, because we don't have Zoom and Teams and everything like we had in COVID anymore, but still we have them too much. So I love to see real people, to talk to them, because to me these bondings solves problems. So if you want the problem solved, you need to see the people. You talked about what I've been involved with, but I don't want to take too much of your time, where there's lots of people here wanting to say very interesting things. I'm certain about that. What I would like to say is first that yes, I am a big advocate of safe parking places for trucks, and that goes hand in hand, in my opinion, with today's subject. Because if we're going to invest, and we are going to invest in safe parking places, that means that we have the opportunity to invest in new infrastructure that could involve charging station, charging stations, and even I don't know, hydrogen in the future. It depends on how the industry will decide on what's better. Because, and I'm saying this why? Because in my opinion, the industry needs to decide first what's better for the industry, and then the politics should step in, not the other way around. So we need to have. I consider myself as a green guy, and I'm involved in many green projects, but I'm also rational, and I saw in past dealings that maybe sometimes the letter, the papers went too far ahead from the actual reality. So this is why I think these kind of events are very good, and I wish that you could do more and more of them, and to invite more and more MEPs, because the MEPs are the decision makers in lawmaking, in order for people to understand where are our expectations, where do we want to get, and where we actually are now. And if the gap between the two is too much apart, that means that we need to work together to see how we manage both expectations and current reality. Because if we're just going to decide tomorrow everything's going to be perfect, and we're going to vote on a law about that, that doesn't make any sense. And again, thank you for organizing this. And I think that we need to think about, when we say about when we talk about investment in transport, I think we need to start thinking as a whole. So we're thinking now about safe parking places, which means safety for the drivers, which could mean again charging stations, which can mean going more and more green, which needs to be integrated in an IT system, which allows us to first, let's say, count the benefits, check on the safety of the goods and the drivers, and see how the infrastructure is doing. Because we have, there are numbers on a piece of paper, but when you actually see them in real time, which of the slots are working, which are not, if the drivers, if they're going to a certain place and a certain place is empty, when you see that in real time, you can adjust policy, you can adjust investment. So this is why, and I'm going to end it here, I don't want to take too much of your time. I think this is an opportunity to think integrated. So all of this, the driver, the goods, the truck, the ecology of it, and also the management of the full system as an integrated system. And this is what I would like to hear more. And for this, I would like to hear solutions from the industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vlad. I think this is exactly what we're trying to do with this event here, where we bring together, let's say, some of the infrastructure, the secure parkings, together with DACEA, those that are basically, let's say, putting the vehicles on the road. But we also have, RRU here, who represents the road transport operators. So in a way, we need to try to get everybody together in order to figure out how is it we want to, let's say, deal with this or attack this area in the future. I mean, instead of just waiting for policymakers to come up with something, it's probably better that we try to sit together and try to figure out how do we actually how do we see this happening. And I really appreciate the presentation as well that Thomas he has made, because that goes straight into this and say, okay, this could be an interesting rollout that would also fit into the development process of the vehicle manufacturers. So in that sense, it's quite interesting. And then of course one has to see where the money will be in order to invest in all these new green trucks. So that's an issue as well. So thank you very much, Vlad. I think we can count on you in the future as well to be behind this and try to move this forward, because it's very important that we have the lawmakers and decision makers on let's say, a direct link to you guys. And I totally agree with you. We should start doing more of the physical events as well, where we can sit together and really get into depth of these things. That's a lot better for the topic, but it's also a lot better for us as human beings, that we get to know each other much better in this way. So I agree with you, Vlad. So challenges and opportunities, session 1. I mean, here we have the two co-organizers, Thomas Fabian from ASEA, who is the Commercial Vehicles Director at ASEA. Been there for a long time, Thomas. I do remember that. So you are heavily involved in these things here. We also have Frederick Mars, Fred, as I always call him, who is the genie of ESPOC, as I always call him. He's a delegate to the board, but the one that also has been involved basically from the beginning, together with Dirk, that sits next to him there. So Fred will try to, let's say, take the approach a little bit from the views of the parkings and the infrastructure, and then hopefully we can put you guys together and get some kind of symbiosis and discuss a little bit about how do we see this. And then we have, after that, so you know it, in session 2, we have rounded up a number of stakeholders and good people that can kind of, react and discuss a little bit the symbiosis we hopefully can get out of session 1. But I'll come back to that a bit later. So without further ado, and a little bit ahead of a time schedule, Christy, if you can please notice that, I will give the word to you, Thomas, to give a little bit of view of how ASEA is looking at this, and it's as I see it, it's an ambitious and it's a good approach to it. So Thomas, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Michael, for the kind introduction, and also, of course, to the colleagues of ESPOC here to jointly organize this event this morning. I fully agree that it would have been nice to do this in person, but it's also, of course, we were talking in the beginning here, where is everybody based here at the moment or located? Of course, I guess we are probably saving a lot of time and also potentially CO2 by not having to travel to these kinds of events. But of course, it's a big miss, and it would be better to do this in person. But without further ado, I hope you can see my screen. I'm sharing my screen here. And I would like to give you a quick overview of the industry's perspective on this. And as you said, Michael, this is an extremely important topic. Yes, we're faced here with high ambition from policymakers, from the industry, all parts of the industry. So this is ambitious, but this is the way that we have to do. So to set the scene, I would like to make a few remarks and share our view here on decarbonizing road transport. And then I would like to look at the specifics of truck-suitable charging infrastructure. And then I will close with a few conclusions here, and then I look forward to further questions and or discussions. Now, heavy-duty road transport has usually been, or has been used to be seen as a hard-to-abate sector, where it is particularly difficult to cut the CO2 emissions, and that is true. Because here, as you're all fully aware, it's all about numbers. Commercial vehicles are used as investment tools. They're not used for fun. They're used. Operators are using them to run their businesses, and using them just has to be commercially viable and a profitable business, which makes it particularly difficult, of course, to change the business. But it also comes with opportunities. Now, all the ingredients for the transition of this sector to carbon neutrality are available. We just need to deploy them. This is, of course, easier said than done, and there's a number of things that can delay this and that can go wrong. But let me quickly walk you through this here. Carbon neutrality, and this is what we're all committed to, by 2050 essentially applies that from 2040 onwards, all new commercial vehicles, heavy-duty vehicles, must be fossil-free. The term fossil-free is a deliberate choice. It's not exclusively zero emission, but it's fossil-free from 2040 for all new commercial vehicles. And this is the task and the the ambition, of course, of all vehicle manufacturers. Vehicles are our business, so this is what we will have to deliver. And I think we will have opportunity later today, but also over the course of the next few months to explain very clearly that we believe that we're well on track on delivering this. So at the same time, we need to rapidly decarbonize all energy carriers. And this is important. These three key factors, they're not independent from each other, they're interdependent. They need to be in place at the same time, simultaneously. So we need to rapidly decarbonize all energy carriers that are used in road transport, be it electricity, be it hydrogen, or be it fuels. And we need, obviously, the infrastructure to recharge and refuel the vehicles. And the third factor here, equally important, and specifically looking at the colleagues from the lawmaker side, policymaker side here, we need a coherent and effective policy framework which actually pushes and pulls and drives everyone in the same direction. If this is, as I said in the beginning, this is a rational market here, where any change has to make sense from a business perspective. And if one side of the market is being pushed into a direction which other sides of the markets are not pulled into or towards, then everybody is in trouble. So most importantly, in this context, we need a framework, a policy framework that disincentivizes the use of fossil fuels and incentivizes the use of the fossil-free alternatives. And most importantly here, also to close the TCO gap that we see continues to persist for zero-emission vehicles. Now, the speed of this transition, and I would like to pick up on what Vlad said in the beginning, the industry needs to decide. And I think it's pretty clear. The industry is clear where we are driving this, and where the fossil-free future of heavy-duty road transport is. The question is, how fast can this happen? The speed of this transition largely depends on factors outside the manufacturer's immediate control. It can be fast if, for example, the infrastructure is, the charging and refueling infrastructure is not considered a bottleneck. Vehicles will not be the issue. They are available, they're becoming available in numbers. But of course, as I explained earlier, it's not only about vehicles, it's about at least these three factors that I mentioned. So the transition can, and you can see this here in this slide, what we call the blue slide, it can happen relatively fast if, for example, the infrastructure is not a bottleneck. But there's also a risk that this transition to carbon neutrality or to fossil-free alternatives will be slow, stretching well into the 2030s, if one of the key factors of this transition is missing. And you will also notice the color shading in the background of this slide here. This is about, this is to indicate that we need to decarbonize the energy carriers quickly. And this is, of course, beyond our immediate influence. Now, I said vehicles will not be the bottleneck. And just to elaborate on this, in any case, the regulatory framework that is in place for vehicle manufacturers today, and that is mainly the CO2 regulation for heavy-duty vehicles in this context, already requires us to put tens of thousands of zero-emission vehicles onto the market in just the next few years. And this is a pre-Green Deal assessment. So here we're talking about status quo 2 years ago, so 1 or 2 years ago. This is a minimum industry consensus based on the current regulation framework. By the end of the decade, we will likely see and have to see several 100,000 of battery electric vehicles and fuel cell electric vehicles and hydrogen powered vehicles in general in operation in Europe. And this is, of course, as you all know, today we're somewhere in the 98% range or so of diesel registrations. And this has been the case for the last 100-something years. So it is a fundamental shift and transition that this industry is, and all of us jointly in transport and logistics will have to go through at a time scale which is just unprecedented. So now, what does this mean with respect to charging infrastructure? Now, it was said in the beginning, Michael. First of all, it is important to recognize that the infrastructure that is suitable for heavy-duty vehicles like trucks is different from the infrastructure that's needed for light-duty vehicles. Everybody is easily focusing on the light-duty infrastructure, and it is a big challenge, of course, in itself. But when we're talking about trucks, we're talking about something else. And trucks and coaches, buses, everything heavy-duty. It's different. This infrastructure is different with respect to the locations where they are placed, the specific space requirements, because the vehicles are bigger, of course, the minimum power output levels that we're talking about here, possibly reservation requirements. You need to be able to book. I mean, business, running a truck as a business, you don't want to waste or lose time. You don't have time to lose anything. So we need to make sure that the infrastructure is available 24/7, at least, and that the slots are available at the required time. And then there's a few others which we might come to later. Now, another important message is that if we're looking here at the battery electric vehicles as the first zero emission technology that's on the market. All battery electric trucks will require mostly private depot charging stations. So every single truck that is out there as a battery electric vehicle will have to have a depot charging station. And in addition to that, and then depending on the emission profiles, they will also likely require public and or semi-public charging infrastructure, so charging points. And this is what we're talking about here, and also specifically with respect to AFIR. Another point to make at this point here is we don't want infrastructure to become anything else than or anything other than a business in itself. Of course, providing the infrastructure will have to become a commercially viable business in itself. But the reality probably is that it is not going to be the case for a few years in the ramp-up phase of this. So it is important to, just as other parts of the industry are mandated to shift away from certain technologies, we need de-risking, we need support, we need public support to roll out and deploy the infrastructure. And based on some fairly generic operational assumptions, which you see here, and the number of vehicles that we, as I described, will have to put in operation on the European market, we in ACEA, together with the OEMs, developed a view on what the AFIR requirements should be. And with respect to safe and secure truck parking areas, we believe that the AFIR should mandate at least 4 charging points with the power output of at least 100 kilowatt already from mid-25. So that's today's 2022. So we're talking about a little more than 2-something years, 2.5 years, where this will have to happen, where this should happen. And as I said in the beginning, this transition can happen fast if there are no bottlenecks on the road. And this is potentially one of the infrastructure is potentially one of the bottlenecks. Ultimately, and this is another important message here with respect to the difference between light-duty and heavy-duty vehicles, investments in truck-suitable charging infrastructure should focus on the MCS standard, the megawatt charging system standard, which will be finalized within the next 12 to 18 months. So here we're really talking about a few more months, if you want. This is none of us has any time to lose. So we really need to move forward in a very coherent and joint way to make this happen. Now, Another important question, and this shall be the last part here on my side, is of course where to start with the infrastructure investments. Where is it's all where exactly will chargers be needed? And the simple answer, of course, would be everywhere and now, but that's a bit far away from reality. So to help answer this question with a little more detail, we looked together with the truck manufacturers at the OEM's fleet management data at a sample of about 400,000 trucks operated in Europe over a period of about 12 months. And of the total 750,000 locations where these trucks stopped over this period, we identified about 30,000 or so locations that were clustered that met a number of important criteria, like at least 3 different brands at a certain location, stopping at a location, which would ensure that it's not that it's a location where the trucks are actually in operation, in real world operation from different manufacturers, like stopping of at least a few minutes to ensure it's not like a road, a traffic junction or something. This was done already last year in 21, and earlier this year we looked at this again, the same data set, to analyze this further and to see if we can prioritize further the investments that need to be made here. And one of the conclusions that we came up with is that the 10% most frequented locations, which is about 3,000 locations in Europe, cover about 50% of all stops. And we differentiated the duration of the stops here, short stops with more or less 1 hour, which would be ideal locations indicating the need for high performance charging, MCS chargers, and longer stops where the trucks stay for a longer time, 8 hours or more, which would indicate overnight parking. You will see all of this on the ACEA website here. And just to give you, or to make this additional reminder here, this is of course information that we can provide from our perspective. So this is the transport and logistics perspective. This is not ideal. So this is like a long list of locations here. We've tried to condense this and boil this down to the most important ones and the most relevant ones that we see. On the other hand, someone else looking at electricity companies, grid operators, will also have to look at this from a electricity and energy provision perspective. So are there any grids, for example, electricity grid upgrades necessary at these specific locations? I understand they're costly, they potentially require a long time. So this is where others need to step in as well here. And just to give you a few more charts here, you can all of this find it on the ACEA website. We've done this for all European countries and looked at this in steps from the top one, starting from the top 1% of the locations. So the 1% most frequented locations. And a country like Netherlands, for example, we're talking with this criteria, we're talking about 11 locations, which represent about 20% of all truck stops per day. And you see here in the different color shades and in orange, this is the vicinity to the TEN-T network. So the orange ones are close to within 1 kilometer of the TEN-T network, and the blue ones are more than 1 kilometer away from the TEN-T network. And top 1% sounds like a very modest start, right? But we need to start somewhere. If you look at the top 5%, then we're talking about 51 locations for the Netherlands. And we have here with the bold red ring, we have 2 locations where more than 50% of all stops are less than 1 hour. So this is something to look at very closely to see if megawatt charging systems, a high performance charger can be installed here. The same is available for the overnight or the longer parkings on the ACEA website. So this is potentially something to look at for the question here at hand, safe and secure truck parking areas. And just to continue this, talking about the top 10% locations in the Netherlands, we're talking about 100 locations. And as I said in the beginning, we believe in order to enable, and I can't stress this enough, enable this transition at the speed that is required to carbon neutrality and to the new vehicles, we need the top 10% locations equipped by 27. So within the next 5 years or so. And when we're talking about 50% or more, of course, eventually charging, not only during the transition phase, but eventually charging infrastructure must be available as widely so that it's not considered a bottleneck at any point in time. And as I said in the beginning, this can be done for all countries here. It's available for all countries. For Germany, we're talking about 75 locations, looking at the top 1% locations. For Italy, for example, the top 5 locations, we're talking about close to 170 locations. And for the top 10% locations in Austria, we're talking about close to 90 locations. Now, a few conclusions here. We do not expect, and none of us should expect significant behavioral changes when using battery electric trucks. We anticipate and work under the assumption that truck operators will want to recharge the vehicles where they usually stop them today. They don't want to, at least not significantly change the way they're operating these vehicles. We also, everyone looking into infrastructure, we don't have time to lose, as I said in the beginning. So whatever we're doing now needs to have the right effect and needs to have the right impact. So do it right from the start. We need to start with equipping what is required for regional locations, the urban nodes, already by 2025. But with respect to truck suitable infrastructure and charging, we need to focus on the MCS standard right from the start. As I said, this will be ready from about mid-25 at the 24 at the latest. And just to take away any anxieties on the energy providers side here, the MCS standard can also be operated at lower power output. So we're not talking about 800, 1200 kilowatt per se. And of course, focus on the most utilized locations. We need to jointly aim for the top 10% locations to be fully equipped and in operation by 27. A minimum network must be fully operational no later than 2030. And as I said, infrastructure is not our core business, of course, and it shall not become the vehicle manufacturer's business. But we understand upgrading electricity grids, providing infrastructure takes time. It's not done overnight. So do not delay decisions. And I said before, these remarks here are focusing on the charging infrastructure side. But you've seen on the blue slide that I presented, let's not forget about hydrogen as well. So just because I've been focusing on charging here doesn't mean that there will be necessary hydrogen infrastructure investments needed as well. And with that being said, thanks very much. Look forward to the discussion and any questions. Back to you, Michael.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Well, you said that it's not ideal what you have done, but it's the best I have seen until now. so in that way, I find it a very, very good work done. I mean, just one question from me, and then I mean we can take a few questions after the two presentations. But the locations you have identified, I mean, have you also looked at whether that is own depots, for instance, from the hauliers that they stop at, or whether it's stopping at customers? I mean, and locations. You said as well that, I mean, they will stop tomorrow where they stop today. There will be no difference, basically, yeah? But could one maybe anticipate that where they stop today to fuel would be the most important than where they stop today to transmit goods, for instance? Or what's your thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, this is like as I said, this is a long list. So this is sort of like of the gross list, if you want, of the locations, and this is the transport and logistics perspective. So we see every battery electric vehicle out there will require this depot charging. Everybody who on the shipper side, on the haulier side in the end, and everybody, I mean, every logistics side will very soon want to have opportunity charging opportunities at their specific locations. This is included here as well. But with respect to policymakers and the AFIR in particular, of course, we need to identify, and we've tried to look at this from the perspective of what is and needs to be available, publicly accessible, right? Eventually, and I also said this, infrastructure must become a business in itself. That's why we were also modest with respect, for example, to the safe and secure truck parking areas, calling for 400 kilowatt chargers by 25. Sounds like a massive number, but this is also based on the anticipation that once we have those 4 per truck parking area, the rest will become very attractive to add more. So this is the minimum requirement here.
Thank you very much, Thomas. I actually have a little screen open on my screen here where I can see all the participants, and I see a lot of old friends in the list of participants, including Michael Kolb, but many others as well. And I know you all have good views on this. I will take one more question directly to you, Thomas, and then I will give it over to Fred that will also give his presentation. And then I think we have some time to discuss both of the presentations. Michael. Microphone, Michael.
So good morning to everybody there. Thank you very much for the opportunity to get some questions and discuss some points there. Who knows me already, I was former board member of Esborg some years and was 20 years working for Tang & Rast, the mainly German operator for motorway sites, and I developed a truck stop of them as well. And so therefore I'm now involved as consultant for this kind of companies for alternative energies or for truck stop development. And what I see in the moment is that, especially in Germany, but I think it's all over the same in Europe, that we don't find easily grounds to develop the sites, new sites. Surface sealing is not very good opportunity at the moment. So everybody looking not to seal more ground, especially for truck parking. Yeah, this is one of the worst cases you can ask for people. And I discussed this already with some ministers here in North Westphalia, my state where I live, which is a very high density state with 18 million people living there, a lot of trucks and motorways. And I said really to them, before I start to develop green energy hubs, which are absolutely necessary, I need ground for truck parkings. We are missing so much truck parkings in Germany, more than 40,000 lots we need. And if I have these truck parking areas, I can develop around these, I can develop the green energy hubs. So in the moment when we use the existing truck stop sites, they are already crowded by trucks. So the operators, the dealers, the tenants of these sites are not willing to transfer parking areas into battery electric charging areas, because they lose then parking areas for the night, and then the line in front of the entry gate will be longer and longer. There's a main problem, and this is the main problem for everybody here, and therefore we need opportunities and solutions to develop new ideas to extend parking spaces on the same ground, inclusive BEV charging. Yeah, and as I told already, Mr. Fabian, which is a main problem, is the grid. I support some companies in e-charging parks for cars, and they are already suffering in some areas for the entry grid. Means they don't the local.
Michael, do you have a question?
Yeah, the question is how we can solve this problem in the moment with some European support. I don't know about grounds and the grid, because the costs are so high that nobody is willing to do this. And then we have the competition between H2 and battery electric charging, and this will be in the future. And the question is to Mr. Fabian, how he looks to this quite problems.
So thanks, Michael. I think, sounds a bit like the $20 billion question here, or euro question to answer. It's collaboration, right? I can only say what I said before. The industry, vehicle manufacturers have a very clear view of what needs to happen to transition this sector. And I think there is universally here the understanding that this is we cannot delay this transition. So we need to remove all the bottlenecks that are in place at the moment. And vehicles are not part of the bottleneck. Vehicle delivery is not an issue. That's of course subject to economic developments and semiconductor shortages, etc. But it is, with all due respect, it's not rocket science. All the ingredients are in place. What needs to happen at the same time, and that's the issue here indeed, is what about the infrastructure? And I couldn't agree more, Michael. Driving along Germany's motorways, and I think it's the case in many other countries as well. There is a lack of parking spaces for trucks already, but there is no way around. We need to equip those and add with charging opportunities and add those that are missing. Charging infrastructure must become ubiquitously available, so it must not be a bottleneck. And if that's not the case, then operators will simply delay investments in these vehicles, delay the transition of this sector. So infrastructure is one of the key bottlenecks that we're facing here. And collaboration is our attempt here, Michael, to do as best as we can to support this. We have a joint venture of some of the major vehicle manufacturers here who entered this market and themselves and tried to kick off this themselves. So it is. This is the only way to approach this. And just let me reiterate this again, as fast as possible. So there is not any moment of time to lose.
No.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Thomas and Michael. You have your little schematics on the dependency that we have on each other. And when I look at the list of participants, we have Nicolette, we have DXile, we have Luca, Marco, Esbog is there. That is the stakeholders that needs to get together, needs to identify exactly where do we need to push for having the above ground and below ground infrastructure that is needed in order to have sufficient parkings and sufficient charging points when we talk about battery electric vehicles, at least. For that, we also have Frederick Mars that can say a little bit about it for Esbog, how we look at it at least the truck parking areas, part of the infrastructure, because that's only a corner of what you have talked about, Thomas, in your locations, I'm sure. But not the least, we believe that it's a quite important part and can play an incredibly important part of providing the alternative fuels infrastructure, be that electric or anything else. And whether there will be anything else, we can ask you later, Thomas, but that would be a second question. So Fred, over to you.
Good morning. Thank you so much. I hope you can see my screen. Okay, super. So thanks so much, Thomas, and also Michael for the good transition. Both Michaels, actually. Because also Michael Kolb, you raised a point that basically we are going to have here in this presentation, which is more questions than answers, actually, because we tried to regroup what the discussion is in the truck parking operator community. It's quite a wide discussion because you have different types of operators. You have large groups, you have small family businesses. And when you are faced with all these technological changes that you now have, different technologies, what will the future bring? There is a lot of opportunity, but there are also a lot of questions. So probably we'll raise more questions than answers and maybe kick off the discussion like this. So we structured our impulse statement as follows. We said, okay, what does it actually mean to have truck parking areas as more than just a parking place, basically a mobility hub, because this is what we're talking about. If you look at that Thomas' presentation, also what this will require, this is much more than just you did in the past. You had a place, you put a bit of gravel, maybe a fence, and you could park. And the fuel station was anyway nearby. This changes now. Technological options that are being discussed in the community. So this is not an expert opinion. It's more about what is under discussion with our membership, and we are more than grateful for all the inputs that will come and correct maybe these assumptions, provide more input. What is the status quo from the point of view of truck parking operators? And finally, the road ahead. Don't forget, this is a kickoff workshop. We want to make it a series to discuss this topic further. So with that, why are truck parking areas ideal for alternative fuels? The way SBOC sees it, the advantage of a truck parking area is the areas, and Thomas has this geographical analysis, the very secure truck parking areas very often coincide with key transport junctions. They are at the right locations. And Thomas, you showed a map with priority zones, let's say. A lot of these parking areas are associated with SBOC or a member. So the location is, of course, key. You have traditional fueling infrastructure on many safe and secure truck parking areas. So the idea to have a combination of the truck parking area and let's call it fuel business is not new. Now, of course, they will change, but it means that the truck parking operators already are used to that kind of thinking, to have a multi-service hub. Now, in many cases, you have an existing or planned renewable integration with the hinterland connection. We're going to come back to this because this is actually the point of many members of SBOC who say, okay, we started doing something. We have initial solar installations. We have wind energy that we're already using. So we're trying to be green. We try to have some renewable energy sources on site, but it is very often still experimental. This is that you're a first mover. And the question will be how to consolidate this, how to make this a real business model in the future. And for that, this discussion is key. You had 2025 on your presentation, Thomas, with 4 times 100 kW output. The question will be, okay, but how do I plan this over the long term? Because I don't want to stop in 2025 as a parking area. I want to be able to scale it later on. And so there are first steps towards, well, LNG was a big trend before the price increases, electrification. So there are trends there, but they are still embryonic. But this makes truck parking areas a very interesting place to have alternative fuels infrastructure, we believe. We have some initial showcases where there is a start to deal with the topic. If you look at the truck parking area of the year in Béziers, you see here the site picture where you have a lot of solar power. So that's already a very interesting start to deal with that topic. You have Urbasolar, which is an associated member of SBOC, providing a solar solution. So there is already a lot of interest from parking areas to have, well, let's say, alternative energy solutions. And well, we have here also Nomad Power, Hans is in the call, so which initially now is there is a big trend with refrigerated trailers to recharge them. So there are first steps, there's a first movement, but this is still very early, and we are not at battery electric truck charging yet. So there is as we said, there is a lot of opportunities that are being seen by the community, but also with a lot of questions, because what is discussed in the market, hybrid charging, fully electric, BEV charging, hydrogen stations, LNG, and then there is a discussion as well on e-fuels, as far as we could follow it, whether this might be also a possibility to still have a fuel infrastructure. So this is a lot to digest for the truck parking area operators. And the question is also, who is the interlocutor? How am I going to decide in a business case to install such infrastructure? Are there first movers? Are there examples? Can I see the business case somewhere? And this is quite early, so there is a lot of uncertainty in the market. And the question is, okay, maybe one of my competitors will install it first, and I'm going to see how it works. So this is a little bit where this chicken and egg question comes in with the infrastructure bottleneck, as was pointed out. So on the technological options, we are not the right, the truck parking operators are not the one that will impose the technological options. What is being seen is, of course, infrastructure suppliers for the, on the one hand, from the grid side, so to make the electricity connection in the BEV case, and then also the charging infrastructure, the equipment infrastructure. And there we see the challenge that if I'm a parking operator, I'm going to think about, okay, maybe I install an initial number of chargers, but my question will be, how can I scale this if it really takes off, as Thomas said? And there is a lot of uncertainty there that could be potentially resolved if more information was available on what is needed, especially if I have an existing truck parking and I need to, say it bluntly, open the soil, get a permit from the not only the utility but also the network, the higher network operator, the TSO potentially. What we found is there are natural monopolies where sometimes the price can be very high to even connect. So these kinds of questions are essential questions that a membership wonders about. Of course, the truck manufacturers, the models, the more will be visible on the market, the bigger the trend will become. What was interesting in the presentation today is how fast this will actually go. So that's the thing. If the trucks are there, but the infrastructure is not there, then you will have an issue as a truck parking operator, potentially. And of course, the network effect regarding payment system, roaming system, potentially payments for these infrastructures. You have for what we found is you have for the electric cars, you have big roaming operators where the payment is actually being handled via subscription models. So the question will be for the truck parking areas, how to connect to this potentially, or how to establish it themselves. And then the typical first mover risk that you say, okay, I go very fast and I'm visible. This is an opportunity. On the other hand, maybe I invest in a technological solution that I need to update very quickly. So this, we think are the challenges that we saw for membership. Again, more questions than answers, but maybe food for thought for our discussion. On the feasibility, what we see right now is that this the e-fuels discussion is a very German discussion, according to what we saw in the market. It's not 100% clear, but maybe we have experts on the call that know that better, whether or not this will be attractive for truck parking areas to engage in. Hydrogen is coming, but not rolled out yet. Fully electric mobility charging stations are not rolled out yet. LNG is partly rolled out. We have some members who are very active in this, but the costs have, as all the costs have increased. And the biggest challenge is limited awareness and knowledge. So that's what we're trying to do with this. We try to contribute with this series of workshops to that. So what we can take from the initial discussion, the rollout is likely to be very, very rapid. So it's not like from the presentation that Thomas gave, a truck parking area operator can wait, say, okay, we wait until the first electric trucks are there, and then we slowly start thinking about it. Actually, now is the time to think about it. And regarding the obligations, the first one we listed here that we see right now, it's actually in the standard on secure truck parking. It's not related to battery charging, but it's a start. It's you see that by beginning of 27, all the secure truck parking areas will have to have charging for refrigerated trailers. So that will be a must already. And then on the TEN-T network reform, let's say there will be alternative fuels infrastructure obligations, very likely. AFIR discussion, everything. Thomas said it really well. So something is coming, and that's European legislation. Let's see also at national level, there could be even more let's say mandatory steps. So it's not only an opportunity, there will also be regulation on this that will need to be carefully looked at. The opportunities here, we listed a few. So there is, there are a few vehicle manufacturers that are actually interested in contributing to setting up infrastructure. There are some national here. We put a German example. So there are some initial support schemes. There is an initial European support program, the AFIF, where you have, but you see it here, you have unit contributions. So anybody who's interested, there are like 4 deadlines, I think, per year. You can apply, but you need 1 million total budget, and the unit contribution that you receive is listed here. So for 150 kilowatt charging point, you would get 20,000 euros, and you would get a grid connection support of 20,000 euros. So that is already a start. We expect more schemes to be coming along as the EU regulation also evolves. But so there are already embryonic opportunities there. And maybe on the road ahead to conclude. So what is key for the parking areas to understand, we believe, is what is the infrastructure technology regarding the chargers and the grid connection, and what is the cost? So that is the biggest thing. What do I need to do if I want to upgrade an existing parking? What do I need to do if I build a new parking or I extend the parking? What do I have to foresee when let's take some examples we have now. They are building parking areas. What do I have to put in the ground, even if I maybe don't install the chargers yet? These will be the questions. So we need technical specifications in order to be able to plan for the future. And I think this is where the bottleneck at the moment to take up the wording that was used is for many operators. The understanding of what is required actually. So good practices and pilot projects would be a very nice and handy thing. What we've seen is with many other examples, also with the secure parking standard, if you have a few places where this is deployed, where you can see how it works, this is what the market needs, because then the others can follow and learn. And then something very important maybe, what we heard from many members is, okay, there is a medium-term solution. Let's call it the lasting solution. This is gonna be what the market really will be when it's fully scaled up, when most trucks will be electric/hydrogen one day. But what is the intermediary fix? What is maybe the starting point? Maybe one where I don't have to spend that much in the beginning, but to start experimenting, to start learning also about this. So that is an interesting question, if there are technological solutions to start dealing with the topic. Let's take an example from the LNG world, where you had mobile LNG. We have members who have that. First, a mobile station, which is basically a tank, and then later on you build a real infrastructure. So that would also be interesting to see if that is feasible. And to open the discussion, the question is how to convey the information to parking operators, how to initiate the interaction between parking operators and the technology and service providers in the market. It's not always so easy because this is not an established market. This is something that's developing. From our point of view as SBORGs, maybe also a food for thought question for the audience. Would it make sense to have an SBORG task force with the sector stakeholders as we start now in this discussion to have a bidirectional flow of information? And if this develops, maybe SBORG could also set up training and education, let's call it, on that topic to create awareness and provide information. So that was our, let's say, contribution to the discussion. As I said, more questions than answers, but maybe it's a perfect kickoff then for the next speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fred. And at least I saw one flying thumbs up when you said whether we should establish a task force. So there is there is somebody who's willing to that. Just a few fast reactions from my side, and since I'm the moderator, I will just do it bluntly. And I see, Thomas, you have your hand up. I noticed it. I mean, speed, at least for uptake of the infrastructure, is of essence. I mean, Thomas, you had that in your presentation. I think we have it as well. I mean, one of the questions that also always pops up in my mind, and that's those of you that knows me knows that it's not a new thing. I mean, can we afford to be technology neutral still? Or do we have to take some hard choices in order for things to move alongside each other and be ready for the time that we have available? That's a question that I'm having. I can tell you the city buses, for instance, in Denmark, there will be 50% of them electrified in a couple of years from now on. That's already 10% electrified, and there'll be 50% in 1 to 2 years from now on. That can only be done because there's a choice. It's a tender thing, I know, but it can only be done if there's a choice taken that this is what you will have to invest in, and everybody will go in that direction. Otherwise, it would probably not have been feasible to do. So that's one of the things that one probably also should take into account and discuss. Thomas, back to you.
Thanks very much, and thanks for the great presentation here. I just wanted, and this fits perfectly. Just wanted to pick up on one thing. You had this a very catchy screenshot of the a New York Times headline there saying truck makers facing a tech dilemma. Is it electric or hydrogen? No, it's not. With respect to, I mean, there's always technology uncertainty, if you want, when we talk about the future. And technology neutrality is, of course, one of the key principles. I mean, Vlad said this in the beginning. We don't want policymakers in Brussels to tell us this is exactly the type of technology that we need to deploy in the market. Of course not. But at the same time, do not misunderstand technology neutrality or the very natural uncertainty about further technology improvements as a, how do you say, do not take this as a wait and see moment, right? Do not wait. We have a very clear picture of where the industry is transitioning to, where the industry has to transition to. And one of the key technologies here will have to be, and this will have to become the backbone of road freight transport, is zero emission technologies, of course. And the key, one of the key zero emission technologies is charging. It's battery, charging-based battery electric vehicles. No one on the hydrogen side says it's hydrogen only. And no one, if you talk to them, no one on the battery side says at this point in time, it's battery only. So do not take the very natural technology uncertainty or the very valid call for technology neutrality as an indication of wait and see. Do start now immediately with digging the ground, opening the ground, and putting in the big cables for the MCS chargers.
Thank you, Thomas. So that was exactly the answer that I would have expected, and I think as well it's important because money is scarce, and you know there will be some hard choices to be taken also of those that sits on the infrastructure, and a wrong choice taken there can be dramatic. So that means I just heard Thomas say, "Don't worry, there will be battery electric vehicles out there that you can charge." So start digging. so at least that's one point that we can listen to. Does anybody have a concrete question to Fred now? Because otherwise we have another, let's say, panel that will be discussing both of the presentations and a little bit about all the things we have talked about here. But if somebody has a concrete question to Fred's presentation, we can take that now. Otherwise, I would suggest that Christy, should we take a couple of minutes break so people just can fuel coffee? We have time, huh?
I'll allow it this time.
You will allow it. So can we just take 5 minutes break and we'll be back 12 minutes past, 15 minutes past, and we start again at 15 minutes past. So come back, all of you, huh? And thank you very much, Thomas and Fred, for the first go. Huh? let's give it a couple of minutes more until we are a quarter past, Christy.
Sounds good. Did you get the email I just sent you, by the way?
All right, we're just waiting a minute or two more, so and then we'll make a comparison of the coffees that people brought. See where in Europe it's best. I'm just looking a bit on the screens to see if people are back. We'll give it another minute, then we start. It's pretty interesting to see, Marco, that most people, they have an office like yours when they're on Teams. It's it must be a new standard somebody made.
Actually, that's the new IKEA approach.
Yeah.
Standardization is key. It
That's
was
how
mentioned
it is.
before, right?
That's how it is. You're so right. All right, with these words, let's start again. And those that are not back will probably come back in a second. There was probably a queue, not with at the secure truck parking, but at the coffee machine. So we'll start again. Now you heard from an introduction by the Parliament. You heard from Thomas at ASEA, what their view is. Very good work being done there on where are the needs actually to be spread, and time is of essence here in order to meet the goals that I think we all to some degree shares. Frederick from Esbjerg pointed out some of the challenges as well that we see, and a lot of open questions that we have. I'm not guaranteeing to the plus 80 participants we have that the panel discussion will provide answers to all the questions. There will probably be more open questions after the panel discussion as well, but that's exactly why we are doing this. I mean, this, as Fred and Dirk said, this will be, a series of events that we try to do, and Esbjerg might also have a task force that will run through this and try to keep moving in the right direction. So this is one step that hopefully helps with this. So we have a distinguished panel here, I would say. We have Hans Bevers from Nomad Power. In the panel, we have Reinhard van der Brink from Volvo Trucks in. We have Péroline Cardonnier from Truck Étape Belize, so secure parking. We have Jörg Friedrichs from DPDHL, so Deutsche Post DHL. We have Raluca Marian from IRU, and we have Marco with the IKEA office from UETR. So that's the panel that we are having. The idea is that we'll give each of the panelists just 5 minutes to react to the presentations that they have seen and the topics that we have put on here, and then hopefully we can get a discussion going. It's a lot easier if you're standing there in a real live panel with a microphone that you can take away from people and give to other people. But I will try to do my best to get some good discussions going. And of course, your participants, all the other participants, are more than welcome to join into that discussion. But I think let's just start first with getting the, let's say, initial reaction from the panelists. Hans, Nomad Power, should we start with you?
Yeah, good morning. Thanks so much. And thanks for having me. Very interesting to hear the various views and presentations. Maybe in short, for people who don't know me, my name is Hans Bevers, and I'm the Managing Director of Nomad Power. And in case people don't know Nomad Power is a European charging network for refrigeration trailers and e-trucks. Dedicated mainly at truck parks and logistics centers. And this was set up about 7 years ago with support of the EU CEF funding, and it has now grown to about 60 locations in 9 different countries. So we've been involved in this business for a while now. If I sort of highlight some specifics from the presentations, but also maybe focus a little bit on why we think that safe and secure truck parkings are well positioned to play a role as a charging location for commercial road transport. And then I think that was mentioned straight away. And I will highlight it again. The commercial charging demand, the power demand is enormous. And I think it's almost underestimated how large the demand will be for commercial charging, even if you compare that to vehicle charging. And there was a report done by ILAT in the Netherlands that forecasted by 2035 that there was sort of a 6 terawatt hour needed for commercial truck charging compared to 7.8 terawatt for personal charging. So if you look at it, it's about 80% of the market, while there's hardly anything there at the moment. And that is also then exactly bringing you to the next point that all this will be driven by the grid constraints, in my view. And also in the parking possibilities of trucks. Because personal cars, you have a lot of parking available. For trucks, that's very limited. And most of you know that having been talking about the lack of parking facilities and bays for trucks. And that is sort of, if you combine that with the large demand, then it will even put more emphasis on the grid constraint. So that's really an issue. I fully agree with what Thomas mentioned, that I don't think we can expect a lot of behavioral changes from the logistics centers. So they would like to operate as they do now. Without any changes. So, and also if you look now at the type of charging, so you have the typical depot charging, that will also be the first charging for the e-trucks available. That's very similar to what car charging, how that evolved. And then you will go to depot charging and you charge at the client, which is also a typical, similar to depot charging. And then you will see to overnight, or also you see the opportunity charging, and that is what Thomas is mentioning with the mega chargers And the opportunity charging will almost be similar to the refueling business. It's how can you sort of refuel as fast as possible? How can you recharge as fast as possible? And it's not really a parking business. And then you have the typical, what is most interesting for the safe and secure truck parkings is the overnight charging. And that's really where the safe and secure parking will play a role, and where they can also play a role to really help with the grid constraints. Because if you have more time to charge, you don't really need necessarily 800 kilowatt type of charger. And you could easily charge a truck. If you have 9 hours time with 100 kilowatt, 150 kilowatt ultimately, then having to do that in 10, 15 minutes. So that is really a place for the safe and secure truck parking, really to focus on that overnight charging. I think another aspect here, and that's really important, is that unlike maybe personal car charging, the commercial charging is really just in time. So you will see, especially for the overnight charging, you will see a link between parking and charging. There is simply no electric truck driving from the Netherlands to Italy and having to charge overnight in Germany without knowing that they can charge and that they can park. So parking and charging will be very interconnected, and that will be really important for the truck, the safe and secure truck parkings, because they will need to make sure that they have a certain reservation system in place, or that they have a certain IT systems in place to make sure that people can park and therefore charge. And without that, it's not going to work. But that's also, I think, the opportunity here, because there's a lot of people are used to the parking and how to deal with parking. So they can probably also provide the parking and charging. If I then maybe, because otherwise I will probably take up too much time. If I look at the and that's quite specific for the safe and secure truck parking. If I look at the evolution of charging infrastructure, because initially by Vlad George was really well said, like policy papers are too far ahead of the reality. And I think we have to be sure about the reality for safe and secure truck parking now, is that hardly any have any charging infrastructure. So if I look at how the Nomad Power business case is that we actually do it step by step. So we actually say we focus on an existing business case for refrigeration charging, refrigeration trailers. That's an existing business case. If you look, for example, if you make that mandatory, there's a large truck parking in the UK, S40 International, which last month with 30 chargers had 38,000 kilowatt hours in that month only. So that's an existing model which you can run your first experience of charging infrastructure at your parking. Then as a next step, you will combine the refrigeration charging with AC 43 kilowatt charging, and Volvo will explain more about that. But they have, for example, an onboard 43 kilowatt AC charger, which if you charge that for 9 hours, you fully charge again on a model which not even is on the market. And then ultimately you will go to daytime DC charging, and then you will be fully equipped ultimately for DC charging. But the limitation will be there 150 to 200 kilowatts. So I see really a distinction between what Fabian is calling the MCS, although I also mentioned that it can be used for lower capacities, and what you will need for the truck charging business, which will be not the typical 800, 900 kilowatts, but ultimately will be limited to 150 to 200 kilowatts. So that's how we see the business as a first introduction, and that's also how we as Nomad Power look at the further development of charging infrastructure.
Thank you very much, Hans. You went around everything in not too long time, so that's great. Thank you for that. We'll come back to questions and a debate on it. I'll just run through all the views from the 6 panelists first, and then we take everything together in the end. Reinhard van der Brink from Volvo Trucks in the Netherlands, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, true.
Please, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
And you're welcome to put your camera on if you can. I don't see you, but others might.
I have the camera on, I think, and mic is on. Well,
mic is on, so we hear you.
Yeah, nice. Anyway, thanks for invitation to be a member of this panel. Very nice to do it. And yeah, I'm working for Volvo Trucks in the Netherlands, in the market company, and we do quite some electric trucks. I think the Netherlands is one of the 3-4 markets who are a little bit ahead of the rest when it comes to the implementation of electric trucks in the Netherlands. In fact, it started about 3 years ago with just myself and later on one of my colleagues, and now just before summer vacation, we handed over to the dealers, and in fact, all our dealer salesmen can sell the electric trucks. So when it comes to speed, I think that is really speed. In 3 years' time, we have implemented this. When it comes from the trucks point of view, we have to train, of course, the dealers, but also the workshop, the mechanicians. It's about, in a country like the Netherlands, it is about 50 workshops. That means we have to train at least 100 mechanics. It's a 4-day training for each of them. So the training session is about 4 months continuously. And then we have, and don't forget it, we have the bodybuilders and paint shops and everybody working on trucks to complete them from a truck chassis into a complete workable truck. It gives a lot of challenges as well. And then finally, when it comes to charging, and there is said a lot, very nice. And Lord George, he discussed about safety. And yeah, it's all about training and safety in the workshop, not only the drivers. So then we have done a lot of activities. Another nice thing is to think integrated. And later on, Mr. Thomas Fabian, he said about collaboration. And yes, I think that is true. We have to do it all together. And that means we, as a truck supplier, and we can supply the trucks, that is not an issue. That is what Mr. Fabian said as well. And we are a member of ASEA as well. So we agree fully with that. That is not an issue. But the trucks have to be charged. So the charging infrastructure has to be ready in the same time we deliver the trucks. And so both of us have a big job there to do. And then the politicians have to support it. There have to be allowances. There has been said we have to dig in holes to make the grid ready to the parking system, but you need allowances as well from the government. And those people have to be aware and understand the need to be ready in the same time. Otherwise, we come in a chicken and egg discussion. And in the Netherlands, we are close to that. Because there is a grid congestion in the Netherlands, and that can be solved with a lot of nice techniques. But it is, in many cases, it is quite expensive, and then the cost has to be covered by the haulier or the DC or whatever. And that is, I believe, not quite the right way of working. So technical solutions are there, but not always as well. It has been said earlier, the majority of the trucks will be charged at the DC or at the home base, but still we need public parking as well for a certain percentage of the trucks, and also those going overnight. And then Hans, you have to correct you a little bit. Next week we will supply the first truck, so they are on the market from now on. and we will start up production, and there will be coming a lot of trucks quite soon. Think about from 2 months on, we start delivery. Yeah? When the trucks is produced, it has to be transported to the markets. Transport from Sweden to the markets, it takes a week. Then it has to go to the dealer in the paint shop, and it takes another 3-4 weeks. And then they are registered, and you see them on the markets, and they are taken into service. So, yeah, we are confident that we will take into service quite a number of trucks still this year. So that's okay. Then you were looking for payment systems. I think in the Dutch market there are suppliers of charging infrastructure, and they can also supply you with the payment systems. I think from technical point of view that is quite well solved. I've seen in the meantime very nice systems for working up to 20-25 trucks in a fleet, where the owner exactly knows which truck has been charged, and he also can then send an invoice to the right owner of that truck. They are very nice things. It's also discussed we need reservation systems. Yes, our logistic system is just-in-time system, and we need reservations. And that has to be combined with the obliged resting time from the drivers, because hauliers cannot afford themselves to pay the driver about 60-70 euros an hour, or maybe even more, for just parking the truck and charging it. So it must be combined. And I've had very nice discussions also with the people who supply logistics programs to the hauliers, so they can plan their trips, and also charging time will be included in those programs. So there are very nice initiatives taken there. So I can say industry is ready in more or less all respect for this, but we need reservation systems which are reliable, and the charger has to be available when the truck is arriving. So you cannot expect that drivers are very kindly waiting and asking another guy from please disconnect your car or disconnect your truck because I made a reservation. It has to make clear that there is a reservation. I think that is a very important thing as well. At the moment, we see that there are really a lack of locations where the trucks are coming. We are delivering distribution trucks and tippers and solo trucks, quite small and quite high maneuverability, so they can sometimes use the parking lot of a car charging location. Might be difficult sometimes, but we manage. But when we start now with the big combinations and the tractor trailers, it's impossible. And we need a lot of space. We need high output levels. We need a reservation requirement, and we need uptime. I think those are the big demands from practice, from the market. Of course, besides the bigger picture, what was very nicely explained in the presentation from Mr. Fabian. Thank you very much. I wait for the questions for going further on.
Thank you very much, Reinhard. And it's good to hear that the first truck will come on the market and they will start rolling out as soon as the Swedes get them shipped down in Europe.
Yes.
So that's positive to hear. Then we move to one of the truck parking areas, the best one that won the award of the best truck parking actually in 2022. Trochetard Béchère. Péroline, I see you, so you're there. The word is yours.
Yes. Hello, thank you for inviting us. So I'm Péroline Cordonnier, I'm the executive assistant of FAL, which owns Trochetard Béziers. So today we would like to say that we agree that secure parkings are really interesting to roll out the alternative stations to recharge trucks, because as you said, their locations are interesting. Most of the time They are close to highways and close to logistic areas. And so it's definitely a strategic location to recharge the trucks. And also in the secure parkings, we can meet the different needs for trucks to recharge because they will have enough space to park, and they won't cause any troubles to the public areas like the streets or the roads, because they will have enough space to park for half an hour or 8 hours if it's needed. And we also wanted to talk about our projects. So we have 2 parkings, the one in Béziers, Troquet à Béziers, and the one in Toulouse, which is Truck Arena 31. So in the parking in Toulouse, so it is close to the highway A61, sorry, and it's located in Eurocentre, which is a logistic area, and which has a lot of companies inside. And so in Toulouse, we are planning to roll out a hydrogen station, and also to implement electrical charging terminals for trucks. And in Béziers, so the parking is close to the highway A9 in France. And we are planning to open by the end of February 2023 an LNG station there. And we also are planning to develop an hydrogen station and to implement electrical charging terminals as well by 2023 or 2024. And we are also following the rollout of biofuel. And especially the B100. And so what we think will be a challenge, as you said already several times, regarding electric charging, will be to manage the parking spots, because we will have to make sure we have enough specific parking spaces in the parking. So we have to make sure we don't lose parking lots in our secure parking. So we will have to certainly add some spaces for trucks to be able to recharge. And we also, of course, have to make sure that people can find available spots easily, so they won't have to wait too long. And also, as it was mentioned as well, to make sure they are able to respect the legal breaks they have to respect according to European law. So yes, I think for us it will be the main challenge to know how to organize this availability of spots for electric charging. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Péroline. Thank you. It seems to me that some of the secure truck parkings, they are ready as well, and they are planning to roll out the infrastructure. So that's at least a good sign. Already now I see that there might be an issue with this reservation. I used a car sharing once in a while, and I have 5 minutes to go to the car and get it. Otherwise I lose the reservation. Maybe we should think about something like that. Anyway, sorry, that was a sidestep. Thank you, Péroline. Jörg Friedrichs from DPDHL. Over to you, please.
Hi, Michael. Yeah, many thanks. And many thanks for the invitation to this panel discussion and the chance that we are able to provide our thoughts on that topic. Yeah, some words to me. My name is Jörg Friedrichs. I started to work for DPDHL more than 20 years ago in several ops areas. And since 2015, our team is responsible for electrifying our fleet. So starting in Germany with our own delivery vans, Streetrouter, as you probably know. And now, since 1.5 years, also the other business units in all global areas are putting events into operations. And now we are also starting to electrify our regional traffic. So let's say the 16, 18 tons battery electric vehicles or trucks. And we are also thinking about electrifying then the long distance line haul trucking. With almost roughly 6,000 own trucks in Europe, and more than 10 times additional trucks from our service partners driving for us. We can definitely say we are also heavily involved in the upcoming changes. I totally agree with Thomas and Frederick that an ambitious infrastructure rollout is key to ramp up zero-emission HDVs. So without having reliable infrastructure available, we have no chance to, let's say, put battery electric or trucks with alternative technique into operations. And therefore, access to public fast chargers like MCS mentioned before is essential, so that the time needed for recharging, at least during the short time parking, is quite comparable with the current refueling of diesel trucks. Knowing quite well that this is still a bit in the future. And for sure, overnight charging is a slightly different story. Here, also from our point of view, charging power per charge point of roughly 100 kilowatt is sufficient. And therefore, also the trucks, it's necessary that they have the CCS plugs available, sockets available. So it's quite important not to, let's say, concentrate on MCS charging. And to be honest, for overnight parking and charging on our own premises, we are using AC chargers. So we have 10, 12 hours time to recharge the batteries, and with 22 or even 43 kilowatt AC chargers, we have plenty of time to recharge the trucks. And AC chargers are quite more the DC chargers are quite more expensive than AC chargers, so 6-7 times more expensive. And also from our point of view, safe and secure truck parking areas are quite good located to implement something like what was mentioned before in so-called mobility hubs. And in this context, from our point of view, it's quite important to have the right dimension of power outputs, and these power outputs needed have to go far beyond to the current Commission targets. Make it right first time, I would say, is, to avoid additional infrastructure costs in a later stage must be, let's say, the basis for all of our activities. This is, let's say, based on our experiences after the installation and commissioning of what we have roughly 25,000 charge points, mostly AC and minor DC, to be honest. But the basis to start from is quite comparable when you are implementing 60, 80, or even more 22 kilowatt chargers per location. So the biggest location we, let's say, equipped currently with 80 chargers are a depot with 120 vans, and without having dynamic load balancing system, also here we would talking about at least 2.5 megawatt just for the chargers, and therefore it's quite important to think about a real-time load management system what we have in place since 2.5 years. So to go to the next step, we need definitely sufficient and reliable public infrastructure, as I mentioned before, and for POD and regional tracking, we as DPDHL are able to invest into our own infrastructure, and to be honest, we are doing this already to a large extent. But for long distance tracking, it is essential to have a powerful and reliable public infrastructure, as I mentioned before. And last but not least, don't forget H2, which is a fuel that we expect to play an important role in long distance tracking in the long term. And I'm looking forward to an inspiring discussion later on, and give back to you, Michael.
Thank you very much, Jörg. Good to see you again. I think all your distribution vehicles are definitely some of those that also, let's say, change very fast, as we have seen on other kinds of, types of vehicles. Luca from the RRU, we move to you.
Hello. Hi, Michael, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Raluca Marian. I'm the director for EU advocacy at IRU. IRU, for those, if there are some of you not knowing IRU, we represent commercial transport operators, so hauliers in this context, also passenger transport, but relevant for here. Hauliers. So this is a very, very important and interesting topic for us, also because it combines two very critical areas for our sector. One is social sector, conditions for drivers, which are obviously the parkings, and the other one is environment and decarbonization. So as a social partner on a EU level, IRU has been for a long time in discussions with the unions, with the ETF, and with the European Commission to support and promote the building of parking areas, and in particular safe and secure truck parking areas. Now, if we look at this discussion and we combine the two topics, so safe and secure truck parking areas and infrastructure, we first saw a very and we are very happy to see these provisions. We saw the European Union's thinking about that in the proposal on the alternative fuel infrastructure AFIR. And there, for the first time, we saw that in this proposal for a regulation, and we see that this specific provision is going through well with the legislators. It is specified that at least one electric recharging station dedicated to heavy-duty vehicles should be placed in any safe and secure parking area. So this comes in AFIR. Now, I listened very, very carefully to Hans and also to Peroline, and I saw that you already see business case in some cases, but in our view, if we look throughout Europe, and as it was also mentioned before, if we really want to drive a truck from the Netherlands to southern Italy or Sweden, even to southern Spain, of course, a business case here and there won't secure, let's say, a safe recharging of these trucks all along the way. So we believe that, of course, in the first step, there won't be a business case for a consistent and well-delivering infrastructure across Europe. So there must be state intervention and state support. Hence, we are, of course, very happy to see that there are some initiatives in this respect in some proposals for EU legislation. But, of course, having this general provision in AFIR is not in the alternative fuel infrastructure regulation proposal, so it's called AFIR, is not enough. Why? Because, of course, it's necessary to have density. So safe and secure truck parking areas are not so many at the moment throughout the EU. So having one charging point generically mentioned in any safe and secure truck parking area is definitely not enough. So then we are looking with hope to another proposal of EU legislation, which is the TEN-T proposal. So there, if we look at the TEN-T, we see that without talking about infrastructure, but just safe and secure truck parking areas, the EU is proposing some, or is proposing, because the legislation is not passed yet, but the Commission proposed some deadlines for a certain density of safe and secure truck parking areas. And there they impose at least one safe and secure truck parking area every 100 kilometers on the core networks, core TEN-T network and comprehensive network. But the timeline for that, it's almost like a far off dream. So 2040 and 2050, which honestly, it's beyond many people's careers. So at the moment, nobody would care. So hence we are intensely active on that file as well, in order, again, in combination with the alternative fuel infrastructure legislation, to make it more realistic. So to have intermediary targets, and also to move closer the targets for these thresholds, let's say, which are imposed by the Commission. So more specifically, we are aiming, according to our position, we'll see how successful we are in advocating this position. We are aiming to get 2030 as the target for one safe and secure truck parking area every 100 kilometers on the core network and 2040 for on the comprehensive network, and to have an intermediary target in 2025, where the current number of parkings of safe and secure parking areas should be doubled. So that's according to our position, but we'll see again how successful it is. So assuming we had all these parking places there, and that they would all be equipped with adequate charging infrastructure for heavy-duty vehicles. The next step, and I've already heard it from several speakers before, is the reservation system and the waiting times. And this is also part of IRU's position on the alternative fuel infrastructure, and that doesn't pertain only to the safe and secure truck parking areas, but to the whole network of charging infrastructure for electric heavy-duty vehicles. This has to be available. And it was mentioned that there are very good initiatives in the market, but the problem with long-distance transport is that these initiatives have to cover a big part of the network, because if the initiatives are mainly national, by definition, we go again from Sweden to southern Spain, or from Lithuania to Spain. So there are very big parts of actually the entire European Union we are talking about, and we need systems which are consistently covering everything. So then, of course, we hope that private initiatives will naturally emerge once the business case is there, because these parking areas are there and the electric trucks are there. But in parallel, we are also hoping for some EU intervention. And here I would like to mention the third and last proposal, which I'll mention today on EU level, which is the revision of the ITS system, so the Intelligent Transport System of the European Union. And there the Commission is proposing a system of national access points. They are called NAPs, which will make available all kinds of public service information, or let's say information which are very important for the larger public. And our call there is that information on the charging infrastructure should be part of that. So should be part of the ITS and should be included in the NAP information. So the information made available by these national access points, which will be established in each member state. So that's just some food for thought here from the hauliers and road transport sector. And of course, probably it's implied in everything I said until now that our sector is calling for options, and you heard from DHL as well. We are very, very much eager to embrace the new technologies and have options. Of course, not only electric, we like hydrogen, and we also like the continuation of the combustion engine based on carbon neutral fuels. But definitely electricity and electric vehicles are one pillar of the future, and the charging infrastructure is a condition precedent to any successful deployment of these kind of vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you, Raluca. You went around all of the stuff, and it's interesting to see that all of you are basically pointing at the same things that needs to happen in order to be successful. And what you also gave was a little bit of view on what the Commission is actually working on. So I think we all have a joint responsibility to put maximum pressure on the Commission to make sure that the proposals are going the direction that we need. Marco from UETR is the last speaker in our panel, and then we have another, roughly 15 minutes just to get questions and reactions from the participants. Marco, over to you.
Thank you, Michael. Welcome everybody. I represent UETR, which is the European Association of Independent, Self-Employed and Broker Small Hauliers in the EU. So I think that it's great to have Esbjerg and the SIA having organized this morning exchange in such an important manner for transport sector as a whole and the society. So both presentations were extremely good and inspiring. So definitely food for thought. On the mapping exercise conducted by ASEA, well, that's extremely helpful. But I would say a pragmatic approach to guide the action in the future. And on the other hand, we see an opportunity with parking areas to support it. And well, the two networks do not have necessarily to coincide, but rather they have that be complementary action in synergy. So creating, let me say, an ecosystem, which is key. That's essential in an ecosystem. All parts of the supply chain and infrastructural sector and automotive value chain, but also the whole economy work together to achieve a common goal here, which is the green transition. And on top of that, the parking areas can deliver environmental for the risk, let's say the reason listed by ESPOG, but also, as rightly mentioned before, social sustainability. We are living in a very challenging, unpredictable, and complex world. Very likely we are at a turning point, not only for transport sector, there are many other challenges, like, for instance, a shortage of drivers. We need to make the profession more attractive, and so parking areas can definitely be key to make the profession less hard and, as I said, more attractive, to make sure that we have enough drivers to deliver goods all over the EU to the benefit of the real economy and society. I like to say all the time that the parking areas are the caravanserais of the 21st century of today. So they were key in the past to deliver the success of trade routes, and they can be today as well, ensuring environmental but also social sustainability in the continent. Another quick comment, as mentioned in the presentations, the infrastructure must be delivered. Well, on the speed, there was reference on the fact that it can be fast, or it should be likely sweet, well, right. But let me bring up to the table quickly the ETS discussion. Well, if and when any ETS for transport would be delivered, well, the precondition for any ETS would be the full deployment of ACER in the EU. So I do welcome Mr. Georgios' comment on reality and the piece of paper in this regard. And speed will require binding targets for all actors and actions, but in particular for public authorities, also for the level of completion of the infrastructure. So I also agree on the fact that it is not just the track, indeed, but what we need is also a transition pathways for companies, green finance with robust scrapper schemes all over the EU. In order to make sure that there will be investments in green smart technologies and vehicles, of course. Well, it is no secret that the green transition is expensive and will be expensive. And well, that's of course a bit the elephant in the room here. We have skyrocketing prices of oil, gas, electricity, and so these prices must be lowered. Otherwise, operators and sectors will be very simply unable to cope. So we know that the EU is working on that, is working on interventions, maybe starting in the short term, but we need something more radical and permanent. And so I think it is our goal here as stakeholders to put pressure to the EU to make sure that this will happen. Otherwise, again, the green transition will very likely not be achieved in terms of timing and content that we all expect. There was reference to energy mix, which is definitely good. Technology neutrality, we fully support that. I saw a reference in ESPOG's presentation to e-fuels for well. Well, that's likely a field of discussion in the near future, whether this will be suitable for road transport or rather other modes of transport. I think that this would require a serious impact assessment to make sure or to check whether it will contribute to the transition or not for road transport, for operators. So provided that the fuels will be made from green electricity, and I understand that's also the same for hydrogen. So I know time is running here. I think the way forward is to enhance the dialogue as much as we can, and I would like to give a big kudos from the fact that with ESPOG, we have now a reshaped, renewed engagement from parking areas perspective in the EU, and this is something that I have not seen in years. So that's really, really good. in an ecosystem, as I said before. Dialogue with the relevant stakeholders is key to find solutions together, to make sure that actually we will live in a green, fine, but also workable and affordable, this is key, affordable operational environments for operators. So I know the time is limited, so these are just some preliminary remarks from our side on the two good presentations I have seen. So happy to further discuss and exchange from here until the end of the seminar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marco. I mean, if I just look at all the presentations, I think there are some commonalities. I mean, cooperation is needed amongst all the stakeholders. That's for sure. I mean, we need to make sure that the lawmakers, they are listening at least to the industry, so we get the timing right. That's obvious, and we need to move forward in harmony. It doesn't make any sense that Volvo, they put thousands and thousands of trucks on the road if there's no charging infrastructure, for instance. So things need to move together, and of course there should be some financing available as well, and that probably is even more important in the times that we're living in at the moment. So I open up now for, let's say, 15 minutes of good discussions here. I think I see two from ECG. I don't know which one of you want to take the floor. You can fight it, or
I think
maybe
Namrita was first. I'm sure we'll say different things. Go on, Namrita.
Okay, can you see and hear me? I think that's okay, yeah?
We can hear you at least.
Can you not see me? No, should be on. Basically, I think it's great we're having this discussion. And at ECG, which is the European Association of Vehicle Logistics, we just finished a report looking at the charging infrastructure for heavy commercial vehicles. And obviously, when we're carrying cars, they're very heavy vehicles. And so from that point of view, I think the MCS charging system is extremely important, that we actually push this simply to allow for opportunity charging, which will allow for more long haul travel. And in order to get the MCS system mandatory by 2025, maybe, because a few of them are coming out into the market in 23, 24, I think we need to accelerate the knowledge of MCS charging systems and the companies that are producing them, because at the moment we've got two that I know of, Alpitronic, which is already quite involved in the MCS charging system, but then we've also got companies like Design Work, which are working with the Swiss government to sort of accelerate MCS charging system. So we need sort of competition in the MCS charging system arena to get this going. The second thing is further to Raluca from IRU's comment about the locations of the charging points. I think it's great, the ASEA project with the Fraunhofer Institute on the top 10% of the charging locations. I've looked into this in quite a lot of detail. I've also been in touch with Dr. Patrick Plotz, who's from Fraunhofer, as well as from the HOLA project. And I think this top 10% is great to look at, but we need to look at where those top 10% are on each national plan, because the problem is sometimes if you're looking at the top 10% of most used charging locations for current trucks, they may not actually facilitate long haul travel across the EU. And therefore you might have them concentrated. The top 10% in Germany is one part of Germany, as opposed to along the route to travel from country A to country B via Germany. So while it's important to look for the top 10%, we also need to look at the routes for long haul travel, which will be quite different to the top 10% usage from current trucks, which don't have that system of charge anxiety, basically. And the third is, when I was talking to various OEMs about their charging locations, and everyone was saying, oh yeah, there's charging locations for heavy duty trucks. Well, I spoke to Fastnet, which is the locations for light vehicles. They said we can have a couple of trucks coming in, but our ground cannot take heavy duty trucks. So this is a big problem, because what we don't realize is underground is a lot of the storage, and you can't have very heavy trucks with 10 or 15 cars carrying on them there. Second is the location for them to turn. You can't turn in these locations. So when I then talk to Daimler and various other companies who have pilot charging places to show their clients the kind of depot charging they can help you get when you buy an electric truck, those locations make the press, but they are not open to other truck makers. They're not open to the public. So if you are driving from A to B and there's a, for example, Daimler or any other OEM which has their charging infrastructure for their pilot projects, it's not open. Neither is anyone's depot because those are private depots. I wonder whether it's something we need to do is to list where the private locations and the pilot projects are of these charging infrastructure for heavy duty trucks and try and open them up, because otherwise we're not going to get to a carbon neutral transportation system by 2050 for the heavy duty vehicle industry. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Namita. Was that it, Mike, or did you want to add something?
Thanks, Mark. Just to say, it's great to see that all our speakers are so aligned, really. So it's all been said, and it, clearly we all have a similar understanding. I'd just like to emphasise that it's already too late. No one is being ambitious enough. No one's, in addition, addressed the availability of green power, whether it's electricity or hydrogen. But our industry, Namrita's touched on it. We roam more than most, so we're more dependent on long distance journeys than most. And Thomas's members who build cars rather than trucks are already pushing us as an industry to decarbonize. But in the same way that we see charger anxiety starting to impact on private car buyers now, and it's holding back sales of EV cars, it's the same for us. Operators are not going to invest in vehicles that they cannot operate efficiently and profitably. So my question, if you like, is simply, how do we accelerate this?
That's a nice question, actually, because I think everybody has had that topic up, and that's been, let's say, a key thing here. We need to move together at the same time. At the same time, we also need to accelerate. So does anybody have any good ideas of how we can do that? I mean, I think we as Esbjerg are willing to play our role, of course, and try to push that the safe and secure parkings are making charging infrastructure available to everybody that wants to reserve it. But I mean, we will not be enough. So I have Oleg as the first, and Kanu, and then Konstantino, and then Thomas. So Oleg.
Thank you, Michael. For me, there is absolutely two key conclusions for me personally out of that discussion. The first is that, of course, we need a political alliance to move forward the parking agenda. We heard about Germany, we heard everywhere. So this political alliance has to be there, in which we have to involve cities and regions as well, and trade unions, that's for sure. And the other big conclusion for me personally out of that discussion is that there is a need for a technological alliance. The task force that Fred was suggesting, because basically the knowledge is spread everywhere, and you have to put this knowledge in one place, start thinking together, collectively start thinking together, and then learning from each other. And that is, I think, out of that, the solutions will come out. So I think the first task is probably even the technological alliance, and then the political after that, but it probably going in the same way. Thank you.
Thank you, Oleg. Then I have Konstantino Kanu.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to react on what was said before regarding the charging infrastructure needs. We've heard also before from the comments, and also what Oleg just said, the importance of setting these up, having sufficient charging points, and also the role that secure parking areas can play in this. And
Konstantino, sorry, can you just let me know where you're from? Actually, you're one of the few.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry. My name is Konstantino Kanu, and I work for PLECA, the European Freight Forwarders Association. So indeed, what I just wanted to mention is that within the secure parking expert group, a great deal of work has been achieved already with the experts, and we're currently looking into an initiative to make an updated mapping of the parking needs that were originally done in 2018, because it's been over 4 years have passed. It's a bit outdated, and our idea is that this could really support parking areas in creating a business case in view of making an informed investment decision, because we always hear about this chicken and egg situation. And from what we also heard today during this workshop is that the same case applies also for charging infrastructure. So our idea here was, would it be an idea to combine this? Basically, since we need a well-functioning charging infrastructure for the transport and logistics sector, wouldn't it be good to create synergies here and combine the mapping of the trucking area needs together with the charging needs, so that we could see at which parking areas we would need how many charging stations. So we think that ultimately this would support both the business cases for the parking areas and the charging points, but as well as serving the end user in the end. So we thought that this would be maybe an idea for an initiative, and we were wondering how we could join forces maybe in this regard.
I think it makes a lot of sense, as long as it's not a 3 to 4 years initiative, because it's something that needs to happen relatively fast. I think. So maybe that can be linked into the task force. Let's say technological task force. I think that Oleg mentioned that could be a task for them maybe to take. Thomas.
Yeah, thanks very much. How do we accelerate this, Mike? Your question. I mean, I think I mentioned this before, and it's not anything new, right? Collaboration. This kind of is the answer. This kind of events, of workshops. I think this is the only way forward here, because this is not a challenge that any single part of this value chain faces. We're facing this collectively, and if we're not, as you said, if we're not solving the infrastructure question, we're not going to see the massive market ramp up that we will have to see, or at least, I mean, as I said in the beginning, there's going to be the initial wave of vehicles is going to rely heavily on depot charging, and it's very simple. You have, if you want 350,000 battery electric vehicles in operation by the end of the decade, then you need 350,000 chargers, plus the publicly accessible chargers. And this is where the chicken and egg question comes in. I would dare to say that at least from the chicken side or the egg side, whatever, the problem is solved, because we have the vehicles. They are available. What we do not have at the moment is the infrastructure. And when it comes to your remarks, Namrita, very much appreciated. Yes, of course, we all know that transport and logistics, this is per se a cross-border, a European business. So it doesn't stop at national borders. On the other hand, the electricity side of the business, the grid side of this, is very much a national business still. And we need to start, I'm not saying let's change the approach here. We need to start somewhere, right? And if we start with the top 10% of the locations in the Netherlands and the top 10% of the locations in Belgium, then we can, with some confidence, hope that the business case will evolve and they will eventually allow the cross-border operations. But the message needs to be spread that, of course, we're not going to save the planet here by electrifying the Netherlands, right? We also need to do this in the more remote parts of Europe for a start. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Thomas. I think it's getting together nicely, all of it. Raluca?
I just wanted to also elaborate a bit on the grid part, because Thomas very promptly mentioned that, and I think that's a very good idea also and I've heard it also before in the discussion, and because talking about the parking areas and building the infrastructure in the parking areas, that's and can be also outside of the parking areas, but today we talk about that, it's one part of the equation. And there we could have a private initiative, we could have a PPP, we can have only the state paying for this in order to create a market in the beginning, whatever. There can be different financing models. But what happens with the grid? And we've heard this from some of our members who started electrifying their fleets and willing to do that. But then there is a part of the grid, and that's the grid upgrade. So in order to be able to charge their fleet, the grid has to be upgraded. Who has to get the authorization for this, and who will pay for the costs? So if you have a safe and secure truck parking areas and you take into account the costs for the infrastructure you want to build in the parking, should you also take into account the grid part and the investment in the grid? So that's also something to be taken into account. And just one very quick question for Weinand. He mentioned the trucks which will be produced or put in the market soon. I just wanted to ask, are they 40 tons trucks, or what's the capacity of those trucks?
Weinand, maybe you can just very fast answer that. I understood that it's 40-ton trucks. I mean,
yes, it is 40 ton. Actually, it is 44 ton trucks. Yes.
Yeah. Mike, a last little comment here, because we have to start rounding up slowly. So.
Sure. I just wanted to agree with Raluca and say I think we've all underestimated the scale of the infrastructure challenge. And just to give you one example of that, here in Belgium, if you go and buy an electric car and you buy a supercharger or whatever to have fitted at home, and you call your electrician, the likelihood is he'll come around and say, oh no, there's a house in your road already got one. I'm afraid that the grid won't support anymore. So if we have to recable every road in the country, as well as doing all the things that we need to do to charge electric trucks, I really don't think anybody has got their heads around just how big a challenge that is.
I think you're right. That is a huge challenge, and we see that, for instance, in the let's say city bus arena, where all the depots has to be electrified at the moment, and the grid issues that are coming up in this regard is let's say not to ignore. Let's say it like that. And we will have the same in the heavy truck industry when we have to electrify depots or electrify safe and secure truck parking areas or anywhere else. And I just saw a comment coming in on can you maybe use battery storage solutions as well, and there are companies that are doing that. For instance, in China, they have worked on that for a long time. So they take the car batteries that are only 60-80% capacity anymore, and they use them as battery or electric storage out on depots or other areas where they have to put chargers. Yes, that can maybe be something that can be looked at, and at least it's working in China to my knowledge when I was there before Corona, because they showed it to us. So there are a lot of things that we need to sit together and try to brainstorm on and try to work towards. And I agree, Thomas, the 10% is important. I mean, we should start somewhere, and we should not start to say that we can solve it for 100% immediately. So 10% of locations could probably be a good way to start, and then we have to start at the right 10%. There we can really move things. So I think that's some of the let's say conclusions I, as a moderator at least, can draw, is that we probably need to create some kind of grouping, task force, call it whatever, where we sit together and discuss this and maybe have more of these kinds of events. Thank you from my side very much for those that presented. And I will now hand over the conclusions to Dirk Bernas, the General Manager of Esborg, and you, Thomas, from ACEA, the Commercial Vehicles Director. So you can also fight on who will start, but I will take it in the order that is put in the program. So Dirk, you start. If you're still there. Well,
perhaps he's muted.
He might be muted, but
Thomas,
Thomas, you start then, and then I'll see where Dirk is.
I think he's online, right? So,
yeah,
please.
I'm online.
Now he's online. So Dirk.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank our excellent speakers, our panelists, and those who contribute to this workshop for participating. And also I want to thank Christy to organize together with Oleg behind the screens to manage those workshops. As we heard, there is a lot of work to be done regarding infrastructure for alternative fuels. Luckily, we have many viewpoints represented here. I suggest we make a task force, like we already more times mentioned during the workshop, to continuing this working on the topics discussed here. Esporig is happy to facilitate and to follow up to make sure that we're continuing working to improve sustainable with transport. These are some of the topics that we make a conclusion out. We are now in transformation, and it's very important to inform all the involved parties with adequate information. The message from Thomas is very clear. We have to start with electrical vehicles now, and with implementing technology for electrical charging, and afterwards the other technologies. The mapping that Thomas showed is perfect as a start, but it does not mean that if you are not on the map, you should not install it. We have to cooperate between all the parties and also involved authorities like FLET said in the beginning from the workshop. We have to think how to combine funding for parking and alternative fuels to accelerate the implementation. And let's create this task force to bundle knowledge and expertise. The Esporig is going to take the initiative together. When Thomas agreed, we can do that together with ASEA. So the name for a truck parking is going to change. It's going to be a safe, secure, sustainable, and connecting truck parking for the future. This is the first kickoff workshop, and there are coming more workshops to following up those things, because it's a huge topic. Also, Esporig organize different workshops, and Christy will inform you about those workshops, and they are not less interesting. So I thank you again, and we will have another workshop and hope to see you there also again. Thank you. And I give the floor to Thomas, I think, now.
Thanks very much, Dirk. And also from my side, great pleasure, of course, to having organized, thanks to this workshop, joint initiative here. Thanks to Christy and Oleg. Just to confirm, this is a start, of course, and we need to be very fast jointly. It's not that we're, I said this in the 3 factors in my presentation at the beginning, we're all in this together here. So, and this is not moving anywhere unless we remove all the bottlenecks that are in place at the moment. So, indeed, this cannot be solved overnight. So it's not just this 2-hour session here that is going to solve everything, but perhaps but this needs to be continued, of course. And I think this the part of the challenge here and the message is to get out the message, so to share the information what we have. But this also needs to be picked up by others. And I very clearly heard what the colleague from CLECAT said, for example, that of course our maps need to be mapped and additional layers need to be added. From the electricity grid providers, from the whole year. So this is just the start. This is available publicly on our website. Everybody is encouraged and invited to live up to their individual responsibilities, of course. And let's see this. I think you started this way, Michael. Risks and opportunities. I mean, of course, lots of uncertainties, but it's a huge opportunity. It's a business opportunity for many out there. And yeah, that's why this is a start. and many more of those contacts and sessions need to follow. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you very much, Dirk and Thomas, and thank you to all speakers, to all of you that attended. Thanks, Christy. Thanks, Oleg, for organizing. So with these words, I think we close the session. It's the first time ever I have been in time to close anything according to the time plan. So that's in itself an achievement. So thank you very much, everybody, and have a nice afternoon now. Take care. And we will continue.
Bye.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.